It sits in the middle of the water, cold, isolated, surrounded by strong currents and freezing temperatures. If you stand on the shore of San Francisco and look out, you can see it. Quiet still, almost calm, but for decades that place meant one thing: no way out. This was Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, a prison built not just to hold men, but to break the idea of escape itself. People didn't just believe it was secure. They believed it was impossible to escape. Not difficult, not unlikely, impossible. And that belief is what made what happened next so unbelievable. Inside Alcatraz, life followed a strict rhythm. Every movement was controlled, every action observed. Prisoners lived in small cells, surrounded by thick concrete walls, steel bars, and constant surveillance. There were routines for everything: waking up, eating, working, sleeping. Nothing was left to chance. Guards watched closely. Systems were designed to prevent mistakes, because Alcatraz wasn't just any prison. It held some of the most dangerous and determined men in the country. But even in a place like that, where everything is controlled, there is one thing that can't be contained: thought. Somewhere inside those walls, a plan began to form. Not quickly, not carelessly, but slowly, carefully, patiently. Because in a place like Alcatraz, you don't get a second chance. One mistake, and everything is over. So the plan had to be perfect. Every detail considered, every risk understood. 3 men, Frank Morris and brothers John Anglin and Clarence Anglin, began working in silence. They didn't rush. They didn't draw attention. They blended in, followed the rules, acted like every other prisoner. But behind that normal routine, something was happening. Their cells had a weakness. Not obvious, not visible at first, but there. Ventilation openings, small, hidden behind the walls. And over time, using simple tools that weren't meant for this, they began to dig. A spoon, something so ordinary, so harmless, became their way forward. Night after night, quietly, slowly, they chipped away at the concrete. The sound was small, almost nothing, especially with the noise of the prison masking it. They worked when no one was paying attention. They hid their progress carefully, using fake covers to make it look untouched. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and still, no one noticed. Because sometimes, the biggest things happen in the smallest ways. But digging through a wall wasn't enough, because even if they got out of their cells, they were still inside the prison, still surrounded by guards, still trapped on an island. So the plan grew. They needed a way to disappear, and that's when they came up with something unexpected. They created heads, not real ones, but close enough. Using soap, paper, and hair collected from the prison barbershop, they built fake heads, painted them, shaped them, made them look real, at least in the dim light of night. And every night, when they climbed into their beds, those heads stayed behind. From a distance, it looked like they were sleeping, breathing, still there, while in reality, they were already somewhere else. Behind the walls, in spaces no one checked, moving quietly, carefully, slowly. Above the cells, there was a hidden area, a utility corridor, dark, dusty, forgotten, and that became their path. They moved through it, learning it, understanding it, until they knew exactly where to go. But there was still one final problem: the water. Because escaping the prison wasn't enough. They had to leave the island, and the water around Alcatraz was deadly, cold enough to drain your strength in minutes, currents strong enough to pull you away instantly. Most people believed no one could survive it, but they didn't plan to swim. They planned to float, using raincoats, dozens of them. They built a raft, carefully stitched together, sealed, tested, something that could carry them across the water, something that could turn the impossible into something just barely possible. And then, the night came. June 11th, 1962. Everything was ready. Every detail planned. Every step understood. There was no going back now. One by one, they moved. Out of their cells. Through the holes they had created. Into the hidden corridor. No noise, no mistakes. Their fake heads resting on pillows. Fooling the guards. Everything working exactly as planned. They climbed higher, moving through the prison structure, until they reached the roof. And from there, they made their way down into the darkness, into the cold night air. Toward the water, the raft was waiting. They pushed it forward, stepped in, and began to move. Away from the island, away from the prison, away from everything. And then, they were gone. By morning, something felt wrong. Guards began their routine, checking cells, walking past rows of prisoners. And at first, nothing seemed unusual. The heads were there, still on the pillows, still convincing. But then, something didn't feel right. A closer look, and suddenly, everything changed. They weren't real. The beds were empty. The prisoners were gone. And just like that, the impossible had happened. An escape from Alcatraz, the prison that was never supposed to be escaped. Search teams launched immediately. Boats scanned the water. Helicopters searched from above. But there was nothing. No bodies, no clear evidence, no answers, only questions. Did they survive? Did they make it across the water? Did the plan work completely? Or did the ocean take them? No one knows. And that's what makes this story so powerful, because it doesn't end. There's no final answer, no confirmed outcome, just a mystery, a story that still leaves people wondering, even today, because 3 men walked out of the most secure prison in the world and were never seen again. And maybe that's what makes it unforgettable. Not just the escape, but the unknown, because sometimes the most powerful stories don't have endings. They leave you thinking. And if this story made you pause, even for a moment, then stay here, because history is full of moments like this. Real moments, impossible moments, the kind that feel like fiction, but aren't. And the next one might be even harder to believe.